Hello all, welcome to Allied Lecdem channel. Today we'll continue about the classification of bones. In previous video we saw about the introduction of bones, composition of bones and regional classification of bones, that is axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Today we'll see about the classification of bones according to the shape. Okay, let's go into the topic. According to the shape, the bone is classified into first is long bone. Each long bone has an elongated shaft, that is diaphysis, and two expanded ends, that is epiphysis, which are smooth and articular. The shaft, that is diaphysis, typically has three surfaces separated by borders and a central medullary cavity and a nutrient foramen which helps in the growing of the bone. Examples are typical long bones. The typical long bones are humerus, radius, ulna, femur, tibia and fibula. Miniature or short long bones have one epiphysis like metacarpals, metatarsals and phalanges. Modified long bones have no medullary cavity like clavicle. It transmits weight from appendicular skeleton to the axial skeleton. Next is the short bones. Their shape is usually cuboid like a cube or scapoid, boat shaped. Example for short bones are tarsal and carpal bones. These are pierced by blood vessels. Third is flat bones, resemble shallow plates and form boundaries of certain body cavities. Example of flat bones are bones in the vault of the skull, sternum, ribs and scapula. It acts as a protective bones to the organs. Next is fourth one is irregular bones. Example is hip bone and bones in the base of the skull. Example sphenoid and first and second cervical vertebra. Fifth one is pneumatic bones. Certain irregular bones contain large hair spaces lined by epithelium. Example is maxilla and sphenoid, etc. They make the skull light in weight, help in the resonance of voice, acts as a hair conducting chambers for the inspired hair. It improves the quality of the voice. Sixth one is sesamoid bones. They are bony nodules found embedded in the tendons or joint capsules. They have no periosteum and ossifies after birth. They are related to an articular or non-articular bony surface, and these surfaces of contact are covered with hyaline cartilage and lubricated by a synovial membrane. Example is patella in the tendon of femoral bone. Functions of the sesamoid bones are to resist pressure, to minimize friction, to alter the direction of pull of the muscle, and to maintain a local circulation which protects the vessels, blood vessels and nerves. Seventh one is accessory bones are not always present. They may occur as ununited epiphysis development from extra centers of ossification. Example suture bones of the skull, cervical ribs and lumbar ribs, etc. Next is the developmental classification. The developmental classification is divided into two, that is membranous bones and membranous bone, that is dermal bone, cartilaginous bone, membranocartilaginous bone. Next type is the stomatic bones and visceral bones. Membranous bone is the ossify in membranes, that is intramembranous or mesenchymal ossification, and these are derived from mesenchymal condensations. Examples like bones of the vault of the skull like frontal, parietal and facial bones like maxilla. Cartilaginous bones which ossifies in the cartilage, intracartilaginous or endochondral ossification are thus derived from the replacement of preformed cartilagen cartilaginous models. Example like bones of limbs like humerus, femur, vertebral column and thoracic cage. Next is the combined of both, that is membrane and cartilage. Ossify partly in membrane and partly in cartilage. Example is clavicle because sternal end ossifies by endochondral ossification while the rest of the bone ossifies by intramembranous ossification. Next is the other second type is the stomatic bones and visceral bones. Most bones are stomatic. They are few and develop form of pharyngeal arcs. Visceral bones examples are hyoid bone, part of mandible and ear ossicles. According to regional classification, it is divided into two, that is axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. This we saw in the previous video. Next is the structural classification, that is macroscopically the architecture of the bone may be compact or cancellous. Compact bone is a dense structure like ironary, but it is extremely porous. It is best developed in the cortex of the long bone, and this is an adaptation to bending and twisting forces, while calcaneus or spongy or trabecular bone is open in texture and it is made up of meshwork of tuberculae, that is rods and plates, between which narrow contained spaces. The tubercular meshworkers are three primary types, namely meshwork of rods, meshwork of rods and plates, and meshwork of plates. Microscopically, the bone is of 5 types, namely lamellar, including both compact and cancellous, oven bones, fibrous, dentine and cement bones. Lamellar bones, most of the mature bones, whether compact or cancellous, are composed of thin plates of bone tissue called lamella. They are arranged as a branch of curved plates in a cancellous bone, but in concentric cylinders, cylinders in a compact bone. Next is the oven bone, which is seen in the fetal bone. Fracture repair are in cancellous of bone. The collagen fibers and bone crystals are arranged randomly. Fibrous bone is found in young fetal bones, which is most common in reptiles and amphibians. Dentine and cement occurs in the teeth. Next is the structure of a long bone. Naked eye examination of a longitudinal and a transverse section of a long bone shows the following features, that is shaft from without inwards. It is composed of periosteum, cortex and medullary cavity. Periosteum is the thick fibrous membrane covering the external surface of the bone. It is made up of outer fibrous layer and inner cellular layer, which is osteogenic in nature. Periosteum is united to the underlying bone by fibers, and the union is particularly strong over the attachment of tendons and ligaments. At the articular margin, the periosteum is continuous with a capsule of joint. The abundant periosteal arteries nourish the outer part of the underlying cortex also. Periosteum has a rich nerve supply which makes it to the most sensitive part of the bone. It is absent, the periosteum is absent in the sesamoid bones, and function of the periosteum are osteogenic, bone growth, bone repair and protective function. Cortex is made up of compact bone which gives it desired strength to withstand all possible mechanical strain. Next is the medullary cavity is lined by a endosteum. The osteoblast in the endosteum helps in bone repair and remodeling of bone. The medullary cavity is usually filled with red or yellow bone marrow. At birth, it is red, everywhere spread active hemopoiesis. As the age advances, the red marrow at the places atrophies and it is replaced by yellow. At the birth, the medullary cavity contains red marrow. At older age, it is replaced by yellow or fatty marrow, which has no power of hemopoiesis, that is production of new red blood cells. Red marrow persists in the calcaneous ends of long bones, that is sternum, ribs, iliac crest, vertebra, skull bone, etc. The two ends of a long bone are made up of cancellous bones covered with a hyaline, that is cartilage, articular cartilage. As we already know, there are four parts of a bone, that is epiphysis, diaphysis, metaphysis and epiphyseal plate. Epiphysis, the ends and tips of a bone which ossifies from a secondary center are called epiphysis. Diaphysis, it is the elongated shaft of a long bone which ossifies from a primary center of ossification. It receives blood supply from nutrient artery. Third is metaphysis. The epiphyseal ends of a diaphysis are called metaphysis. Epiphyseal plate of cartilage, epiphyseal plate separate epiphysis from metaphysis. Blood supply to the bones. Arterial supply is nutrient artery, periosteal artery, epiphyseal artery, metaphyseal artery. Venous drainage are veins are numerous and large in calcaneous red marrow containing bones, that is example is basivertebral veins. In compact bone they are accompany artery in the Olkman's canal. Nerves accompany the blood vessel. Most of them are sympathetic and vasomotor in function. A few of them are sensory, which are distributed to the articular ends and periosteum of long bones, to the vertebra, large flat bones, etc. Okay, now we will see about a summary about the bones. Bones are made up of connective tissue. It forms a main supporting framework of the body. Function of skeletal system are: it gives shape and structure to the body, protect organs, muscle attachment, produce blood cells, stores and releases fat and minerals like calcium, phosphorus, etc. Composition of bones. Bones are composed of two, that is extracellular matrix and cells. Extracellular matrix is divided into organic and inorganic. Organic contains collagen, non-collagenous protein. Inorganic contains calcium, phosphorus, etc. Cells like osteocytes, osteoblasts, osteoclast, osteoprogenitor cells. Classification of bones. According to shape, it is classified into long bone, short bone, flat bone, irregular bone, pneumatic bones, sesamoid bones, accessory bones. Developmental classification, it is classified into membrane bone, cartilaginous bone, membrano-cartilaginous bones, somatic bones and visceral bones. Regional classification is of two types, that is axial and appendicular. Structural classification, macroscopically it is divided into compact and cancellous bones. Microscopically it is divided into five, that is lamellar, oven, fibrous, dentine and cement, which occurs in the teeth. Structure of a bone. Two ends are called epiphysis. Shaft, that is diaphysis, it is composed of periosteum, cortex and medullary cavity. Metaphysis, the epiphyseal end of a diaphysis are called metaphysis, and epiphyseal plate which separate the metaphysis and diaphysis. I hope you understood what is bones and its classification. In upcoming videos you can see the detailed explanation of bones. Thank you for listening. For more videos please do subscribe our channel.